But we had community parenting in my neighborhood. If I was down the street and I did something stupid, it's guaranteed my friend's mom or dad was going to smack me in the back of the head. And before I could make it home, there was a phone call and either my mom or dad be waiting on the porch to smack me again. You learn things. You learn how to cover things up. You learn how to get away with stuff. If you're a Gen Xer, you've done things that you should have never gotten away with. But you figured out how to do it. So, congratulations. Let's go. Hey, what is going on? Thanks for coming back by the channel. So, I've been seeing a lot of people react to this video, the dangers Gen X faced. And a lot of them are like, wow, that really happened. Oh, that's what you did. Yeah, I'm a Gen Xer. And I'm going to try to put this video into some kind of perspective so you can understand exactly why we did the things we did. Let's go.
If you grew up as Generation X, then it's probably a miracle you even survived. At least that's what the modern world tells us. Many of the things that were normal back then are now taboo. In this video, we will have a look back and wonder how Gen X kids even survived. Television wasn't everything, but it was still pretty important. If you were a kid in the 70s, then you probably did not even have cable. Most people relied on a television antenna, which was usually rabbit ears and tinfoil. However, there were some households that used an antenna that was mounted on top of the roof. Every so often, this antenna would need to be adjusted thanks to some wind or weather. This became a family affair. Dad, of course, was in charge of the picture, so he was right in front of the television. One of the kids would be up on top of the roof and ready to receive instructions from the relay of the rest of the family spread out from Dad. No one ever thought anything about kids being on the roof and then falling off. Most kids got up there anyways just to get a better view of the neighborhood or the stars. Many newer roofs are much more steep, and that might be considered child abuse to send your kid up there. I guess it's a good thing that people don't have to deal with antennas on the roof.
Okay, let's talk about that for a minute. Yeah, cable wasn't a thing. And there were a lot of people who had those big antennas. Now, what did you do if you didn't have that? Simple. Your TV was on a stand that had wheels, and you would just move it a little bit left or right, front or back, closer to a window, adjust the antennas on the TV, the rabbit ears, until you got a decent enough picture to watch. And if you didn't get a good picture, you just didn't watch TV. It's that simple, you know. And as far as going on the roof, you used to do all kinds of things from up there. You could take shots at your friends with a BB gun. You could get a lay of the land, see who's out and about, who's on their bike, who's doing what, where you wanted to go, catch a suntan. I mean, that was a thing.
Summers as a kid were always fun, and why wouldn't it be? You were out of school, and that meant you could spend more time with your friends. But with all that running around outside, you were bound to get thirsty. There's nothing quicker and more refreshing than a sip from the garden hose. Of course, you had to let it run a while before it got cool enough to drink, but it certainly had a distinctive taste. When is the last time that you've seen a kid do this? Hose was also connected to a couple other activities that parents today may consider them to be too dangerous. The first one...
Okay, let's talk about the garden hose. So, I've seen reactors and they're like, oh, who does that? Oh, that's disgusting. I can't believe you did that. There was a reason. If you're a Gen Xer, you know exactly what I'm about to say. You only had two options. You drank from the hose and you got ready for whatever you and your friends were about to do, whether that's jumping your bike off of some homemade plywood ramp to see who could go the farthest, or who was getting ready to go ride their bike to the other side of town that you wanted to go along for the ride. So you drank from the hose. Because if you went in the house to get it from the tap, if you went for a glass of water, you would never make it out of that house again. And what do I mean? You're like, oh, wait, huh? No, you walked in the house to get something. your mom was right there to put you to work. Whether it was fold laundry or do the dishes or, mow the lawn, you were stuck. You didn't have a choice. So you improvised. You let it run a little bit, because when the sun beats down on a hose, that water is hot. But you learn that right away too. But yeah, that's the reason we drank from the hose, because we had stuff to do. We didn't want to mow the lawn.
One was the slip and slide. The older editions of the slip and slide were a little bit more dangerous, and some kids broke bones or chipped teeth on these, but just about everyone slid off the end or over the side and got a grass or rock burn. Believe it or not, they still sell these, but they are a little bit safer. This next item, however, I'm not so sure about. As kids, we all enjoyed playing in the water sprinkler, but some of these sprinklers could be pretty rough. This one in particular was really dangerous. It had a solid steel base that could certainly hurt if you stubbed a toe on it or fell on it, but that wasn't the dangerous part. When the water ran through the sprinkler, it would move the metal fan blade at the top. At that point, it was like a little saw blade that was spinning fast on top, and it could cut through little water-soaked toes and feet. Kids were fast learners, though. If they got cut once, they would be sure to clear it the next time.
That's right. The complete definition of live and learn. You do something stupid, you deal with the consequences, but you know what you also do? You learn how not to do it that way the next time. Yeah. That's why Gen X, we don't care if you stub your toe. We don't care if you got a cut. How'd you get it? Now, what are you going to do not to let that happen again? Yeah.
Kids in our day used to be outside a lot, and we loved it. That worked out great because most of our parents really didn't want us inside the house anyways. As a result, kids spent a lot of time out in the sun. And sunblock? We had no idea what that was. Are you talking about a hat or a shade tree?
Okay. It's true. We spent a lot of time outside. Yeah. And you do get sunburn, and you learn how to deal with it, right? If you get a sunburn and it's hard to sleep, just put some apple cider vinegar on it. Move forward. No point in complaining. It's going to stop stinging in a few days, and then it'll just peel off. You can start over.
At most, we may have depended on SPF 4, and that's only if we were super cautious. Everyone was exposed to the sun, and many of us would compare sunburns at the end of the day. When our skin started peeling, we would see who could peel off the biggest flake. Oh look, that one looks like Texas.
See what I mean? Just peels off. Start over.
It also wasn't uncommon to see teen girls and young women laying out and trying to get that golden beach tan. Quite often, they would speed up this process by using either coconut oil or tanning oil. Today, most kids get lathered up with anything from 30 SPF to 100 SPF. Parents in those days certainly didn't have to watch us like the parents do today. They not only trusted us, but they also trusted our friends and the rest of the community. Parents realized that we needed to do things on our own, and that was how we were going to learn. However, if they were watching and we happened to get hurt, there was no doubt that they were going to be laughing as long as it wasn't life-threatening.
Our parents did say, get outside, go do something, be home before the street light comes on. Yeah. And we had no cell phones. We had nothing. We had our bike and our wits, and our parents had no idea where we were the entire day. They just wondered if we were going to come home. And then they would say, what'd you do? If they said that at all, other than, hey, get cleaned up for dinner. That's usually what you would hear, right? I mean, it was so bad that on TV at 10 o'clock, like clockwork, there'd be a commercial that said, do you know where your children are? Because our parents were tied up with work and parent stuff, adult stuff. They didn't have time to worry about us. And the community used to raise us. I don't know, Maybe you don't know what this is, but we had community parenting in my neighborhood. If I was down the street and I did something stupid, it's guaranteed my friend's mom or dad was going to smack me in the back of the head. And before I could make it home, there was a phone call and either my mom or dad be waiting on the porch to smack me again. You learn things. You learned how to cover things up. You learned how to get away with stuff. If you're a Gen Xer, you've done things that you should have never gotten away with. But you figured out how to do it. So, congratulations. Let's go.
Bikes were everything to a Gen X kid, and they provided us a freedom that we couldn't get from anything else. We could go on adventures that were hours away from home, and for the most part, our parents had no idea where we were at. We also used our bikes to jump some pretty shady ramps. We could do a lot with some plywood and bricks, and it was hours of entertainment. As we look back on our childhoods and compare it to modern kids, it's hard to believe that we did all those bike adventures with no helmet or knee pads. This picture pretty well sums up the generation. This kid is jumping his bike off of a super tall ramp. Notice that he has no helmet, knee pads, or elbow pads. Just pure fun adventure.
Okay. What did you learn in this situation as a Gen X kid? Well, for starters, if you were the guy on the far end and your buddy didn't make it and he landed on you, you would learn two things. One, make sure you're not on the end. Or two, sit down on the side and just wait to see which one gets landed on so you could laugh at him. Just like the guy in this picture sitting up there by the front door. He's just waiting. Okay, how's this going to play out? Is he going to clear them all? Is he going to fall down? Is he going to get the handlebar into his ribs? Yeah, if you're a Gen Xer, you know exactly what that feels like.
If this Evel Knievel lands short, then the kid on the end is in trouble, and occasionally that did happen. As you look at the kids on the side, you can tell that they are worried about this because they've seen it happen themselves. But the best part about this photo is there's a dad sitting on the front steps and he's smoking a cigarette while he's waiting to see who gets hurt first. For him, this is as good as any gong show on television. Back in those days, cigarette smoke was everywhere, and you couldn't avoid secondhand smoke if you wanted to. In fact, most of us had at least one parent that smoked. Parents would send their kids into convenience stores to purchase cigarettes while they waited out in the car. Usually the clerk would just look out and get a nod from the parent, which would signal that it was okay to buy the cigarettes. If the parents were not around, then the kid probably needed a note from the parents saying that it was okay to buy the cigarettes.
Facts. 100% fact. As a matter of fact, we had a convenience store in our neighborhood, and you only had to go down there one time with one note that said, hey, please let my son or daughter buy this pack of cigarettes. Here's my phone number. They would take that and they would hold on to it. And then every time you would come in, you could say, hey, you have that note from my parents. I need such and such pack of cigarettes. And they were like, yeah, no problem. Tell your parents hi for me. That was life.
These notes were never all that official, and it might be written on a notepad, scratch of paper, or the back of a receipt. Dear clerk, please sell Rhett a carton of cigarettes. Thanks, Mom. Can you believe that actually worked? There's no chance that kids could ever do that today. Car safety was something else that most people didn't take too seriously. In the US, it became mandatory that every car manufactured after 1968 had to have seatbelts installed in them. But wearing them was more of a recommendation.
Okay, so you see these guys right here hanging out the back of that station wagon? That was the place to be when you were on a trip. That's right, you could sit in the back seat facing the guys that are driving behind you and flip them the bird, make faces, whatever. Because, I mean, that was just what we did. We weren't in seatbelts because they didn't have any on that particular seat in the car. And the seats that did have seatbelts, well, nobody used them anyway. It was a time of freedom. Yeah, it was fun.
Rather than a requirement until the mid-1980s. Until then, we stood up on the front seat so that we could see up over the dash, and our dad's arm was our seatbelt and the airbag. Another thing that we would do is lay up on the back dash and pick our noses as we looked at the cop car behind us. We thought it was super fun when Dad had to slam on the brakes and we came flying out of that.
I will say, when you sleep in that back window on a long car ride and it's a sunny day, yeah, it gets kind of warm. Real warm.
Window and slammed into the back of the front seat. Back then, we had to learn how to take a fall, and the crazy thing about it is we couldn't wait to get back up there and try it again. Remember some of the other activities we did? We all had toys that are considered dangerous now, but back then it was completely normal. Lawn darts was one of those toys. That weighted sharp point could penetrate anything if you didn't get the heck out of the way. Clackers, click-clacks, or knockers had the possibility of shattering and sending shards of plastic flying through the air like shrapnel. Yet somehow, some of these clackers survived.
Now, I never had the clackers, but I had friends that did. And they used to use those like weapons, like bolos, where you spin it and you let it go, and then it wraps around, right? But the lawn darts, man, I still have a scar. Yeah. My buddy and I were in his backyard, and his brother put a lawn dart on a rope and was swinging it and letting it fly as high as he could. Well, we weren't paying attention. It came right down on top of my head. So, yeah, I know what that's like. It happens. You get stitched up. You go to his house. You have a conversation. Usually ends in a fight, where then you make up and you move on with your day, as if nothing ever happened.
BB guns were another item that was quite common. Kids could go all over town with one on the front of their handlebars, and the BB wars would certainly get intense.
BB gun wars were a given. There was going to be a BB gun war at some point of the week, and there was no stopping it. You were just always prepared. You were ready. Yeah. And as you got older, BB guns changed into different items. How many of you, let me know in the comments, have had bottle rocket wars where you'd hold the stick, light that bottle rocket, and then once it starts to whistle, you let it go and see how far it could go or which one of your friends you could hit without them looking. That was a thing. That's what we did.
Back then, we definitely did not have safety at the top of our list when those broke out. Firecrackers were certainly a lot more accessible than they are today. It seemed like you could pop them off in every city and it was perfectly legal. With all that time that you spent on the bicycle, then I'm sure that you probably came in contact with at least one of these. One slip of the foot and this pedal could travel up your leg like a vegetable peeler.
That, next to the handlebars, was probably the most painful thing. Especially when you jump that ramp and you lose your balance and your foot slips off. The second you hit the ground, yeah, that thing's tearing your shin up. But then you just wipe some dirt on it, seriously, get it to stop bleeding, and then go do it again.
Kids today know nothing about that level of pain. Despite all the dangers that were lurking all around us, it really was a special time to grow up in.
All right. So, a lot of those things were common. And the reason that our generation is, they call us the lost generation, or the middle child generation, right? We learned right away that life wasn't fair. We learned right away that if you wanted to succeed, then you had to put in the work. We learned by trial and error what was safe and wasn't safe, regardless of what the society had to say. And now we just sit back and watch. We don't care about your feelings. We don't care about what, society says is politically correct because we made our own rules. And some of us, well, we still do. So when you see all these people going in on Generation X, wondering what's wrong with us, and then they get upset when we respond, it's kind of like that old adage, let a sleeping dog lie. Don't poke the bear. We don't care. We learned how to handle our problems directly and move on. We learned how to say what we had to say, mean it, and move on. So yeah, Generation X, congratulations. We survived.